They say courtrooms are made of truth, but that morning felt like a room full of rehearsed lies. I didn't expect my daughter to stand, or to touch the screen, or to say, "Mom, they need to see this." But when the video started playing, even the walls seemed to hold their breath. My name is Lena, and after 18 years of marriage, I walked into that courthouse believing I already knew every betrayal my husband was capable of. The air smelled like old paper and cold metal, the kind of scent that makes you feel small. My daughter Emma sat beside me, silent, her fingers shaking in her lap. I thought she was scared of losing her family. I didn't know she was carrying evidence that would break it open. The truth didn't arrive loudly. It arrived in the glow of a screen. The courthouse always felt colder than it should. That morning, when I pushed open the heavy glass doors, the air inside carried the kind of silence that made every footstep sound louder, harsher. I remember thinking the building felt like it had been waiting for me. Like the walls already knew what I didn't. The sun hadn't fully risen yet. Pale light spilled across the long hallway, stretching over the tile floors like thin, tired arms. I walked slowly, my fingers brushing the edge of the wall just to steady myself. My hearing wasn't for another 3 hours, but I came early. I didn't want to rush through a morning that was supposed to end 12 years of marriage. Emma was already there. My daughter sat on a long wooden bench, her knees together, her shoulders tight. She didn't look up when I approached, just kept staring at her phone, holding it the way someone might hold a secret. "Morning, baby," I whispered. She nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed downward. Something in her face was pulled tight, a stiffness I wasn't used to seeing. I sat beside her, leaving a little space like I always did when she was overwhelmed. "I know today is a lot," I said softly. She only breathed in slow, shaky breaths. I reached for her hand, but she slid her phone into her lap and folded her fingers around it like she was afraid someone might take it from her. Before I could ask anything, the doors at the end of the hall swung open. He walked in, my husband, Jordan, late, like always. His shoes clicked with the kind of confidence that didn't match the life we had been living. His tie was perfect, his hair combed back, his smile sharp and thin. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Emma either. He just strolled past us as though we were strangers occupying a space he needed to walk through. I breathed out slowly and felt Emma tense beside me. When the courtroom doors finally opened, the clerk ushered us in. It was a small room, smaller than I imagined, with wooden benches and a window where the morning light fell in long, quiet lines. I sat beside Emma. Jordan sat on the opposite side. The judge walked in with slow, practiced steps and settled behind the bench. Papers shuffled. A microphone crackled. The air tightened. "Before we begin," the judge said, "we'll hear preliminary statements." My attorney leaned toward me, whispering a quick rundown of what would happen. But my eyes drifted to Emma. Her grip on her phone had changed. Tighter. Her knuckles had gone pale. "Emma," I whispered, "are you all right?" She didn't answer. Not at first. Her lips trembled the way they did when she was younger. The way they did when she tried to be brave. Across the room, Jordan spoke to his lawyer, laughing under his breath about something I couldn't hear. His voice cut through the quiet like the back edge of a cold knife. Then Emma leaned toward me. "Mom," she whispered, barely forming the word. I can't let him lie anymore." I blinked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. Her thumb hovered over her phone screen. Her breathing shifted, a fragile, determined rhythm. "I have something," she whispered. Her eyes lifted toward the judge, then to her father, then back to me. It's time." My heart thudded once. Deep. Heavy. "Emma!" My voice cracked, soft as paper. "What truth are you holding?" She didn't answer. Not with words. She only lifted the phone slightly. Just enough for me to see the faint reflection of a video paused at the very first frame. And in that moment, that quiet, breathless moment, I felt the entire room change. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet shift in the air, the way a house settles before a storm. Whatever she was holding, whatever she had seen, it was enough to make my daughter tremble in a courtroom where she should have only been a witness, not a keeper of something heavy and hidden. The judge cleared their throat. "Is there something you wish to present?" Emma looked at me. Not for guidance, not for permission, but for strength, the kind she thought I still had. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Her fingers shook in mine. The phone screen glowed between us. A tiny window holding something neither of us could run from now. I felt the floor beneath my feet as if it were shifting. I felt the years of our marriage pressing against my chest like an old bruise. And I realized, whatever my daughter had recorded, saved, or carried, it wasn't just evidence. It was truth. The kind of truth that could tear a family apart, or finally set one free. The judge repeated the question. Emma raised her head, her voice barely more than a breath. Yes, Your Honor, I do. Her thumb pressed the screen. The video opened, and before a single sound came from it, I knew my daughter was about to show the room something I never imagined I'd have to see. Something that would change the rest of this hearing, and the rest of my life. The video hadn't played yet, but the room already felt different, tighter, like all the air had crept into the corners and refused to move. Emma sat beside me, her hands trembling so lightly that only a mother would notice. The judge asked her to step forward, just to confirm her full name for the record. But the moment his voice echoed, she flinched. Not dramatically, just a small, sharp pull of her shoulders. The kind someone makes when they've been touched by a cold memory. I leaned closer. Sweetheart, you're okay, I whispered. But she didn't look at me. Her eyes stayed locked on the wooden table in front of her, as though the truth she carried was carved right into the grain. Her fingers began tapping, a soft, nervous rhythm against her phone. Tap, pause, tap, tap. The kind of pattern I used to hear when she was a little girl and too scared to sleep alone. Across from us, Jordan let out an irritated sigh. He looked at the judge, then at his lawyer. Rolling his shoulders like we were wasting his time, he still didn't look at Emma. Not once. The judge cleared their throat. Miss Emma, you may come forward. Emma's breath hitched. Just a tiny sound, but it cut straight through me. I touched her arm gently. Look at me, baby. This time she jerked away. Her chair scraped against the floor, the sound too loud in a room that had gone painfully still. For a moment she just stood there, her chest rising in short, shallow breaths. I recognized that breathing. I had seen it before, late at night, behind her bedroom door, when she thought I was asleep. It was the sound of a child holding back words that burned. The judge softened their voice. There's no rush. Just tell us when you're ready. Emma nodded, but her eyes, they didn't move. Not toward me, not toward the judge, only toward her father. Jordan finally noticed. He lifted his eyebrows, annoyed, tapping his pen like he had somewhere better to be. What now, Emma? He muttered under his breath, not even bothering to hide his impatience. And just like that, my heart cracked in a way I didn't let show. Emma's shoulders tightened. Her hands curled around her phone so tightly I saw her knuckles turn white. And suddenly, like a door creaking open in the back of my mind, I started to remember. The nights she stayed in her room, even when I asked her to watch a movie with me. The way she stopped sitting at the dinner table when Jordan was home. How she used to laugh so loudly. And how that laugh had slowly gone quiet. Like someone had turned the volume down as the years went by. The way she avoided eye contact whenever he walked into the room. The way she always locked her door. Back then I told myself it was teenage anxiety, normal distance, growing pains, but sitting there in that courtroom, watching her hands shake, watching her eyes refuse to lift. The truth started pressing against my ribs like a cold fist. Something had happened. Not to me, not between us, to her. And she had carried it all alone. The judge spoke again, gently this time. Emma, you can take a moment. Would you like to sit? Emma opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her lips trembled once, then again. I reached for her hand a second time, slower, softer, almost afraid she'd slip away entirely. But when my fingers brushed hers, she didn't flinch. She froze. Her eyes finally lifted, not at me, but toward her father. I followed her gaze. Jordan was leaning back in his chair, frowning with irritation, not concern. His jaw tightened, like he was bracing himself for inconvenience, nothing more. And in that moment, in that simple, careless expression, I felt it, the dread, deep, cold, crawling up my spine like a warning I had ignored for far too long. Emma whispered something so quietly I barely heard it. I didn't want to show this, but he left me no choice. Her voice broke on the last word. She swallowed hard, then stepped toward the front of the courtroom. The judge nodded for her to continue. She lifted her phone, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it, and turned it toward the screen beside the bench. I stood slowly, not even realizing my legs were moving. A mother's instinct is louder than any courtroom rule. Emma, I said softly, my voice trembling. What happened? Tell me. She turned to me, and for the first time that morning, she looked directly into my eyes. There was no anger there, no rebellion, only pain, deep and tired, like she had been carrying something far too heavy for far too long. Mom, she whispered, her voice thin as a thread. I tried to protect you. My heart stumbled. Protect me from what? Her breath shivered. Her fingers tightened around the phone. From him, she said. My knees almost gave out. Before I could take another step, she faced the judge again. Your Honor, she said, her voice shaking but steady enough to stand on its own. I need to play the video now. The room fell silent. Even the air stopped moving. Jordan leaned forward at last, his confidence flickering. Just for a second. His eyes narrowing at the sight of his daughter standing against him. Emma tapped the screen. The first frame flashed up, and in that breath between truth and revelation, I realized something horrifying. Whatever my daughter was about to show us wasn't just a video. It was the story she had been trying and failing to survive. I didn't expect the courtroom to feel this cold. Maybe it was the marble floors. Maybe the judge's unreadable face. Or maybe it was simply the weight of everything pressing down on my chest. Years of doubt, years of pretending, years of telling myself I was imagining things. But nothing prepared me for what my daughter was about to do. The judge cleared her throat. Emma, she said gently, do you wish to say anything before we proceed? Beside me, Emma rose to her feet. Her legs trembled, but her chin stayed high. I could see the fear in her eyes and the stubborn courage underneath it. Yes, Your Honor, she whispered. I want to show something. My husband let out a soft scoff, loud enough for everyone to hear. As if she has anything relevant, he muttered under his breath. I flinched. Old habits, old wounds. The judge nodded. What is it you want to show? Emma held up her phone with both hands, almost like she was holding a fragile truth. A video, she said. My heart froze. A video? Of what? The clerk helped her connect the phone to the screen mounted on the wall. The television flickered to life. A blue glow covered the room. The sound of my own pulse drowned out every whisper behind me. The judge folded her hands. Go ahead, Emma. My daughter inhaled shakily, then pressed play. The room went silent, completely, painfully silent. The footage was grainy at first, shaky, as if recorded secretly. I recognized the living room, our living room, the dim lamp in the corner, the old rug, the faint hum of the fridge downstairs. Then I heard his voice, my husband's, clipped, angry, sharp enough to cut bone. Turn that thing off, he barked in the video. Emma's tiny voice, younger, smaller, replied, I just want you to stop yelling. I covered my mouth. I remembered that night, not clearly because I was upstairs, crying into a pillow, thinking the argument was over, thinking he had calmed down. I never knew Emma was downstairs. Your mother is dramatic, he hissed in the video. Always has been. If she just behaved, none of this would happen. My stomach tightened. How many times had he said that? How many times had I believed him? Emma's voice wavered in the recording. That's not true. She tries. The camera shifted slightly. Emma was hiding behind the hallway wall. Brave enough to film, scared enough to stay unseen. He kept talking, and every word cut deeper than the last. You think your mother loves you? He spat. You think she cares about what happens to this family? She doesn't. She starts fights, then cries and pretends she's the victim so you'll pity her. I'm the only reason this house still functions. The courtroom air grew heavier. Even the judge leaned forward. I felt my throat close. I knew those words. I had heard them whispered, thrown, carved into my skin for years. But hearing them played back, in front of strangers, in front of my daughter, made something inside me collapse. The video continued. Emma's voice whispered, please stop. You're scaring me. For a second, he said nothing. Then came the part that made the blood drain from his face in the courtroom. Because he wasn't angry anymore in the video. He was calm, coldly calm. That's good, he said quietly. Fear keeps people in line. Even your mother knows that. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. I couldn't breathe. The man sitting beside me, the man I once promised to grow old with, had gone pale. His jaw clenched. His fingers twisted nervously. The judge's eyes were fixed on the screen. The video wasn't done. Don't tell her about this conversation, he said. If she ever leaves, she'll regret it. And so will you. Understand? Emma didn't answer. The silence was a kind of terror. He stepped closer. "Do you understand?" "Yes," Emma whispered on screen. I felt my knees weaken, not because of what he said, but because of how small her voice sounded. How frightened she had been, and I had never known. The video ended abruptly with the sound of footsteps approaching, and then a quiet gasp before the recording stopped. The courtroom lights felt painfully bright when the screen went black. No one spoke. Not a single person breathed. Emma stood there, holding her phone like it was still burning her hands. "I recorded it 2 years ago," she said softly. "I didn't want to show anyone. I thought maybe I misunderstood. I thought maybe Mom loved him too much to believe me. But then things kept getting worse." Her lips shook, and I didn't want her to be alone anymore. I reached for her, my fingers trembling. But I didn't touch her yet, not until she finished. The judge looked at my husband. His shoulders were rigid. His eyes darted everywhere except the screen, except me, except Emma. "Do you wish to respond?" the judge asked him. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time, the man who always had something to say had no words at all. I finally stood. My legs were weak, my breath unsteady, but my voice, for once, felt strong. "Your Honor," I said quietly, "I didn't know that video existed." Emma turned toward me, tears shining. "But I know what it cost her to film it." The judge nodded solemnly. "We will take a short recess." The gavel struck. People rose. Whispers filled the room. But all I saw was Emma, my daughter, the girl who carried pain she never should have carried. I walked to her slowly, afraid she might crumble, afraid I might. But when I reached her, she fell into my arms. And this time I didn't hide my tears, because in that moment, one truth echoed louder than the video, louder than his threats, louder than the entire courtroom. She wasn't the only one who had been afraid. I had been too. But she was the one brave enough to press record. I don't know what I expected after the first video ended. Maybe the judge would dismiss us for the day. Maybe my husband would explode. Maybe I'd collapse. But Emma wasn't done. Her voice trembled as she held the phone. There's more." My heart stopped. My husband shot up from his chair. "This is ridiculous! Your Honor, I object to any further—" "Sit down." The judge didn't raise her voice, but the firmness in her tone sliced the air. He hesitated, and then slowly, reluctantly, lowered himself. Emma swallowed hard and opened another file. A second video. The screen lit up again. I felt myself shrinking into the wooden bench, bracing for whatever was coming, feeling the world tilt under my feet. The footage flickered to life. A timestamp. Late, past midnight. The house looked dark, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The camera angle was odd, pointed from behind a stack of books, like Emma had been hiding it on purpose. My husband paced the living room. His phone lit up his face in flashes. A message tone sounded, sharp, echoing. He opened it, and though the camera didn't capture the phone screen perfectly, the reflection in his glasses was enough to show fragments of text. "She believes everything you tell her. Just keep her quiet. Control is the key." My stomach twisted. Control. That word had followed me for years, like a shadow creeping into every conversation. He responded on the screen. "Don't worry. She won't leave. She's too scared." I dug my nails into my palms so hard I felt the skin break. But I didn't look away. I owed Emma at least that much. He kept talking. To someone, to himself, to the air. The man on screen wasn't the charming one people saw at dinners, or the gentle one he pretended to be in front of neighbors. This version, this was the one I knew. The one I lived with? "Everything has to stay the way I want," he muttered into the dark. "She doesn't get to make decisions. She doesn't get to ruin what I've built." Emma's breath hitched beside me. The courtroom was silent. The kind of silence that feels like everyone is holding the same breath. Then the video caught something else, something I didn't expect. He spoke about me, about my fears, about my insecurities, about the lies he fed into my ear for years. "She thinks she's lucky I stay," he scoffed, pacing. "If she leaves, she'll fall apart. She always comes crawling back, always." A whirlpool opened inside me, swallowing every piece of the person I'd been. And then, the part that made everyone flinch. A tiny whimper came from the corner of the room in the video. Emma's voice. She had been hiding there, filming, afraid, alone. "Emma!" he barked suddenly. The camera jolted violently as she scrambled back. "Are you spying on me?" he yelled, stepping into the darkness. Emma's hand must have covered the lens, the picture smeared into shadows. But the audio kept going. I wasn't, she stuttered. You think your mother needs you to defend her? His voice dropped to a venomous whisper. You think she's some kind of victim? She's weak. Both of you are weak. Something crashed in the background. I felt my body tense the way it used to at home. I could hear Emma's sob. I won't tell her, she said in the recording. Please don't be angry. My husband's voice turned eerily calm. The same false softness that had fooled me so many times. Good girl, he murmured. As long as you remember who's in charge, don't ever forget. The last sound on the video was a door slamming. Then, silence. The screen froze. The courtroom remained utterly still, as though the air itself was afraid of moving. Emma's shoulders shook as she stood there, holding the phone like it weighed 100 pounds. I didn't mean to film him that night, she whispered. I was just scared, and I wanted proof in case something happened. My breath caught. Proof. The 10-year-old version of my daughter recorded proof, because she thought something might happen to me. I felt my heart fracture in a way I could almost hear. I didn't know who to tell, she continued. And I didn't want you to get hurt. Mom, I thought if I stayed quiet, maybe it would stop. Her voice broke. It never stopped. Before I could reach for her, my husband surged to his feet. This is manipulation. This is edited, fabricated. Sit down. The judge's voice thundered this time. He froze. I had never seen him freeze. He had always been the loudest voice in every room, the one who never backed down. But now his mask, the perfect, polished, public mask he wore, was cracking in real time. And everyone was watching. The judge looked at him with a stare that felt colder than anything I had ever felt at home. These videos are raw, she said. Unedited. Time-stamped. The emotional distress in your daughter's voice is evident, and your behavior in these recordings is deeply concerning. My husband shook his head wildly. You're all misunderstanding. No, the judge said firmly. We understand perfectly. He sank back, breath uneven, face blotched with fear and anger. The screen finally dimmed to black. But the truth stayed in the room like smoke, heavy, choking, impossible to ignore. I felt numb, not because of the videos, not because of his reaction, not even because Emma had been silently protecting me, but because for the first time in years, there was no place left for lies to hide. Not his, not mine, not the ones I told myself at night just to survive. Everything had spilled out. Everything was exposed. And when truth finally stands in the light, it doesn't ask permission. It simply takes over. For a moment after the screen went black, the whole courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Not in shock, not in anger, just holding. Like the walls themselves were finally witnessing the truth we had all been living with in shadows. Emma stood beside me, her hands trembling, her chest rising in small, shallow breaths. I didn't think, I just wrapped my arms around her. Her hair smelled like the shampoo she'd used since she was 11. Chamomile. Soft, faint, familiar. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't pull away. When the judge called for a recess, nobody moved. Chairs stayed frozen mid-shift. Pens rested on legal pads like abandoned thoughts. And the air stayed thick, almost sacred. I could feel the judge watching us, not with pity but with something gentler. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. Emma's forehead pressed into my shoulder, her breath hitching every few seconds. I stroked her back, slow and careful, like touching something fragile that I hadn't held in years. Maybe I hadn't. My husband, or the man I used to call that, wasn't looking at us. He wasn't looking anywhere. He was pacing in tight circles, muttering under his breath, one hand shaking in a way I had never seen before. The man who always controlled every room suddenly couldn't control even his own legs. When the bailiff approached, he snapped. A burst of anger, pure panic. "Don't touch me!" he shouted, voice cracking like brittle glass. The room flinched as one, but I didn't. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch. 2 officers guided him out, not forceful, not rough, just firm. His face was pale, the confident smirk gone, replaced by something hollow. He didn't look at me. He didn't dare. The door shut behind him, leaving a soft, echoing thud that felt like the end of a chapter. I never had the courage to finish myself. When we finally stepped through the courthouse doors, sunlight spilled over us, warm and honest in a way I had almost forgotten sunlight could be. I stopped for a moment, letting the heat rest on my eyelids. The stone steps beneath my feet were warm too, held heat from the morning, like they'd been waiting for us. Emma slid her fingers into mine, slowly, hesitantly, as if asking permission. I squeezed back. Permission granted. We sat on the lowest step, close enough to the sidewalk that strangers passed by without glancing at us. Life was moving, breathing, normal, and yet my world felt like someone had tipped it on its side and let all the noise drain out. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder, small like she used to be, before everything got heavy. "I'm sorry it took me so long," she whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't know when she grew old enough to carry fear like that. Fear that hardened into silence, into secrets, into recordings hidden behind books. She had been protecting me, a child shielding her mother. I tilted my head so my cheek brushed her hair. "It's okay," I said softly. "You spoke when you were ready." But inside my heart broke a little, because she'd been ready long before I ever realized something was wrong. We sat in silence, not the fearful kind that used to fill our home, but the kind that comes after a storm breaks. Soft, clean, new. Cars rolled by. Birds chattered on a lamppost. Someone laughed across the street. And the world didn't feel like it was shrinking anymore. I thought about the years stolen by lies. The nights I lay awake wondering if the problem was me. The times I told Emma to just ignore it, thinking I was protecting her. The way silence became our family's second language. She lifted her head slightly. "What happens now?" she asked, voice small but steady. I had no answer. I didn't know what the judge would decide. I didn't know how long healing took. I didn't know what our home would feel like without his footsteps echoing through the halls. But for the first time in so long, the not knowing didn't terrify me. I turned to her and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Now we build something new," I said. Slowly, quietly, together. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. She let it fall. And somehow, that felt like the bravest thing either of us had done all day. When we stood to leave, the sun was higher, bright enough to make us squint, warm enough to touch the parts of me I thought had gone numb forever. Emma slipped her hand back into mine. Not out of fear, not out of habit, but out of choice. I took one last look at the courthouse behind us. Tall, steady, unmoving. A place where lies cracked open and truth finally walked out with us. We stepped down the last stair together, and for the first time in years, I felt the ground beneath my feet. Solid, warm, waiting. Whatever future lay ahead, it would be built on honesty, not silence. And that changed everything.